Okay, our final speaker for this evening is Lisa White, President of Friends of the Hound. Lisa White is the founder and president of Friends of the Hounds, a rescue charity dedicated to greyhound welfare and adoption. Since 2003, Friends of the Hound has been saving greyhounds and finding suitable homes for them as family companions throughout New South Wales and Queensland. Gentle greyhounds are overbred, caged, raced, doped, injured, and routinely discarded and killed, as we heard from Lisa, all for gambling. From the outset, Lisa and FOTH have advocated for an end to dog racing and its harrowing cycle of cruelty and killing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lisa.
Hang on mute. Okay, thank you. Yes, and thank you to Animal Lib for the opportunity to speak about greyhounds and for all your work around greyhound welfare and the welfare of all animals. Unfortunately, I don't have a slideshow to share, and this may mean that you have to look at me, so apologies for that. So for nearly 22 years now, Friends of the Hound has been saving and homing greyhounds in Queensland and New South Wales. Significant involvement with the racing industry has provided comprehensive knowledge and experience of the industry and insight into the systemic cruelty and welfare issues for greyhounds. Our rescue charity operates a successful independent adoption program thanks to passion and dedication of our volunteers. We attribute our achievements to experience, knowledge, and commitment, and the fact that greyhounds in our program are given adequate time and assistance to adjust to companion life. Our rescued dogs live in the home of experienced rescuers and devoted foster carers, with the transition from kennelled racing dog to family companion and the ongoing assessment process occurring in home, in the setting to which these dogs are destined. We provide the time, environment, and positive outcomes that allow best practice, suitability matching, and adoption. The greyhound racing industry overbreeds, races, cages, dopes, injures, and kills greyhounds for gambling. For almost a century now, greyhounds have been exploited for dog racing in Australia. When I rescued my first greyhound in late 2002, this archaic industry was breeding over 20,000 greyhounds every year in Australia. It literally was the quick or the dead. Greyhound racing is reliant on breeding large numbers of dogs. They are bred to be discarded. This is a predetermined fact, and the subsequent routine carnage continues. Greyhound adoption has reached a natural saturation point in Australia, yet the industry continues to breed more dogs with nowhere to go. The report by Dr. Alex Britton, the former Greyhound Racing New South Wales Chief Veterinary Officer, reflects what we have been acutely aware of for many years, that homing rates will never be able to match the supply of greyhounds bred. In Dr. Britton's own words, until the existing backlog of unrehomed greyhounds is acknowledged and addressed, it is utterly immoral to allow yet more greyhounds to enter this unsustainable morass of exploitation and suffering. As a community homing organisation, we have first-hand knowledge of the desperate oversupply of greyhounds. We believe it's imperative that the industry and the public are made aware of the true numbers of greyhounds who are currently awaiting homing within industry kennels. We call them the forgotten and the forsaken. Just last week, a trainer in rural southwest New South Wales was given our contact details by the Greyhound Welfare and Integrity Commission to ask for our help in homing 20 greyhounds. He said that some of these had been on a waiting list now for 2 years. We receive phone calls like this and emails like this every week from trainers wanting to surrender their greyhounds, and sometimes we receive several inquiries a day. Until the numbers of dogs bred and discarded by this industry and the incoming dogs awaiting the same fate is measured and managed appropriately, no amount of welfare efforts will make a concerted difference. In the years that Friends of the Hound has been saving greyhounds, the racing industry has bred over 375,000 dogs. Wow, less than 68% of these dogs were registered for racing. Now, even with an ability to skew or liquefy facts, one must recognise the absolute and unnecessary wastage of healthy, beautiful animals by a powerful and harmful industry. Friends of the Hound has rescued and homed less than 0.01% of these dogs. And whilst these statistics are dismaying, we try to take heart that during this past 2 decades, we have helped to build a very large community, an army of greyhound lovers, adopters, and advocates. With an industry in continuous damage control, community expectation and demand for better welfare and increased adoption opportunities, and the work of grassroots community groups, it has produced widespread support for greyhounds and an end to dog racing. Much of the emotional, physical, and financial burden of caring for and homing greyhounds is placed on our community and charitable, compassionate people and organisations. There is an overall absence of duty of care or regard for the long-term health and life of greyhounds by those actually breeding and racing them. Theirs is a different world with very different thinking. Whilst citing a love of dogs, the majority of people involved in the industry are in it to make money, with the allure of a win setting their conduct and expectations for their products of racing. There is a huge disconnect between greyhounds as products of gambling and as living, sensitive, beautiful dogs. We know that the use of animals is generally balanced against human benefit. However, animal exploitation for the purpose of gambling has a fragile moral claim, given that the greyhound racing industry requires large-scale disposal of dogs every year. The industry has a rather questionable claim on validity. The incredible inaction of government, industry, and practitioners who claim animal welfare at their core continues. For over 2 decades, we've witnessed the lies, misinformation, and smoke and mirrors techniques employed by the racing industry to retain a tenuous hold on an increasingly diminishing social licence. As revealed in the report of the independent inquiry into the governance of greyhound racing in South Australia, the issue of social licence is particularly important. If the industry cannot provide adequate welfare for greyhounds to a standard that the general community considers acceptable, its licence to operate should not exist. Now, greyhound racing authorities and board members are tasked with the impossible to ensure the sustainability of an industry built on the overbreeding and subsequent killing of dogs. The industry faces continued exposure in every state for the deaths, injuries, and suffering inflicted on greyhounds. Multiple inquiries and reviews have been conducted with a plethora of submissions, hearings, reports, and recommendations, mostly damning. Regular media attention and exposés have continued to highlight the gross welfare negligence and corruption, and further sanctioned abuse is evident in the continuous stream of industry internal disciplinary actions. Public backlash has resulted in complacency and apathy and further fabrication and deception, with racing's PR and independent modelling containing creative accounting and claiming overinflated employment and economic benefit. A great article by political editor Bernard Keane in December last year references a report by the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, whereby Greyhound Racing New South Wales independent report claims numbers of jobs sustained and numbers of jobs resulting from flow-on effects, and suggested a large increase in employment. But Bernard Keane points out in the previous census of 2021, a grand total of just 2,405 people reported working in the entire New South Wales racing industry. That's all 3 codes. Keane suggests that the other indirectly generated jobs belong in the same category as the claimed millions of dollars of contributions to the New South Wales economy, which is based on the economic absurdity that if people weren't gambling on greyhounds, they would not spend the money on some other substitute. Australians lose more than $25 billion a year on legal forms of gambling, representing the largest per capita losses in the world. Bernard Keane went on to point out that problem gambling, particularly in regional areas, inflicts significant harm and cost on the community. He argued that if people couldn't gamble on dog abuse, they'd be likely to gamble on any other available form of gambling with the same attendant harms, but pokies don't come with an extended toll of animal misery in their wake to add on to the human misery. Dog racing is a small part of Australia's many gambling activities and would not be missed by the majority of Australians who would likely welcome an end to the misery and suffering that it creates. Racing in Australia is plagued with animal welfare issues and a current decline in wagering revenue, and yet state governments squander millions of taxpayer dollars propping it up. Inflated prize money, breeding incentives, handouts to financially failing clubs, the building of new racetracks and the repair of old death tracks under the guise of increasing safety, all paid to the gambling industry at the expense of sanctioned abuse and death of greyhounds. CPG have an excellent blood money map which describes these funding details. So it's great if you check that out. Greyhounds are at risk every time they are put round a track. A conservative New Zealand government recently banned greyhound racing due to an unacceptable rate of injury. And yet there are tracks in Australia where the injury rate is over 3 times that of New Zealand. New Zealand Racing Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters said that the time has come to make a call in the best interest of the animals. Just last week, an elderly Queensland trainer that surrendered a dog to us said that out of his 7 racing dogs, he only has 1 currently racing, as the others have all sustained injuries. Graham Ashton, in the South Australian report on greyhound racing, stated that the reality is that almost all greyhounds that race for any length of time are going to incur injuries at some point. Injuries to greyhounds on racetracks are commonplace. Over the course of a greyhound's racing career, they will incur injuries of various types, ranging from minor muscle soreness, which is quite common, fractures, and catastrophic injury. Dr. Alex Britton has provided graphic testimony at the Drake inquiry hearing about horrific injuries sustained by racing greyhounds. According to the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, who collate injury and death data from stewards' reports, 128 dogs died on track in 2024, and there were 11,419 injuries. Remember that this is only on-track data. Many more greyhounds die away from tracks after being injured. Friends of the Hound has taken in 3 greyhounds with serious injuries in the past 5 months. We've arranged orthopaedic surgery and provided appropriate aftercare, including physio and hydrotherapy. This has amounted to a cost of $24,000 for our non-profit charity. But at least these 3 dogs survived their injuries and received the treatment and care to adequately recover and to go on and live happy companion lives. Data analysis in New South Wales also shows that greyhounds returning to racing after a lengthy layoff period are at substantially higher risk of sustaining a serious injury. It is unacceptable that injured greyhounds, even dogs with fractured legs, repaired under their injury rebate schemes, are returned to the track. In the past, welfare initiatives have not adequately addressed the health, happiness, security and safety of the dogs, but rather provided questionable initiatives such as ensuring that the dogs race longer. It has been obvious from the beginning that the greyhound racing industry is focused on protecting the industry, not the dogs. The industry often stoops to promoting dog racing as a family-friendly event. However, taking kids along to watch dogs race, collide, fall, suffer injuries and die seems highly inappropriate to most people. Incredibly, a call to replace greyhound racing with exclusively computer-generated meets, that's virtual racing, was slammed as dramatic by Greyhound Racing New South Wales. What is more dramatic than watching gorgeous dogs collide at full speed, flipping in the air, tumbling along the track, breaking spines, necks, or limbs, and writhing and screaming in shock and agony? It's absolutely barbaric. Dr. Liz Arnott, former Chief Veterinary Officer of Greyhound Racing New South Wales, during the current New South Wales Drake inquiry, has identified racing dogs as vulnerable animals. Aspects of their vulnerability not only include exploitation for financial gain and an absence of a voice, but being kept in kennel environments, confinement, spatial confinement, and multiple changes of ownership and environments, plus limited early learning during their important socialisation period. Many greyhounds suffer anxiety, stress, fear, and experience challenges for their long-term resilience and emotional capacity. Rescue groups see these animals all the time. And sadly, industry rehoming is often selective, particularly for dogs that are timid, scared, or reactive. Greyhounds often do not receive adequate exercise, free time, socialisation, interaction, stimulation, and enrichment that they require for optimum health, temperament, and behaviour. Dr. Liz Arnott also stated her concerns during the Drake inquiry about incentives such as travel allowance, and this would likely include turn-up fees as well, which are paid to trainers bringing dogs to the track, conflicting with decision-making on what is best and safest for the animal. Motivation for trainers racing their dogs should be based on the dog being fit and competitive and at the lowest possible risk of injury in terms of their condition. Such financial incentives only add to the injury rates for greyhounds. At Friends of the Hound, we feel greatly concerned about the number of veterinary professionals engaged in supporting and abetting cruel animal industries such as greyhound racing. Veterinarians and universities are caught up in the culture of oversupply and wastage of greyhounds. Rather than upholding their charter to relieve animal pain and suffering, the veterinary industry is drawn into the increasingly publicised greyhound welfare issue by enabling and even supporting the racing industry and the killing of greyhounds. According to Greyhound Racing's euthanasia policies, injured greyhounds or those with behaviour or temperament issues can be euthanised by a registered veterinary practitioner with the appropriate paperwork completed. These policies set out a collaboration and complicity with veterinarians. One would imagine the reliance on and collusion with vets for greyhound euthanasia was formed with appropriate industry-wide consultation and endorsement, yet many vet clinics are completely unaware of the policy. Inappropriately, the euthanasia policy does not specify the requirement for this deemed behaviour assessment to be carried out by a veterinary behaviourist, a qualified veterinarian who has undertaken postgraduate studies in animal behaviour that can professionally diagnose and treat animal behaviour problems, nor has it stated an appropriate timeframe for which this should be effectively carried out. Loopholes are common in industry welfare policy, and some industry participants take full advantage of this. We've been contacted many times by vets who have been tasked with euthanizing a greyhound by their trainer or owner with either a treatable injury or due to claims of aggression or aggressive behaviour for which there is no evidence. Whilst we are grateful to the vet clinic for trying to help these dogs, and we do everything in our power to support them and save the dog, it is completely dependent on our ability to take in yet another dog at short notice. Friends of the Hound and welfare groups are aware of certain vets and vet clinics that have regularly assisted in the killing of greyhounds. Thankfully, there are many veterinarians who uphold their charter and many that would appreciate the opportunity to add their voice in support of an end to the suffering of greyhounds. The use of animals in entertainment, sport or science, where their well-being and safety is at risk, is at odds with the changing values of modern society. Even with tighter regulations and improved governance, dog racing still presents serious ethical and moral issues. Important names within the industry, including leading trainers and industry officials, have been implicated in criminal acts of animal abuse in all states. These heralded trainers often continuing their racing careers despite their actions. You could be somewhat justified in thinking the success of a racing dog lies with the criminality of its trainer. Offences in greyhound racing attract soft penalties, with more focus on fielding race meets than providing deterrence to participants that are committing crimes, even serious crimes of abuse. Participant rehoming is also a huge welfare concern. The racing industry wants the public to believe that most of these dogs are found good homes. This is far from the truth. Many greyhounds are given away to inappropriate homes, and lately many ads have appeared in online marketplaces offering cash incentives, sometimes up to $300, to anyone who wants to adopt their greyhound. Free for all for dogfighting rings, for sure. All the serious issues which the greyhound industry continues to grapple with, overbreeding, lack of transparency, doping, track injuries and deaths, and rehoming challenges, draw public attention and expectation. The emotional case against greyhound racing is easy to make. Racing dogs face routine suffering and short lives. Dogs are one of the world's most favoured companion animals. People love dogs, so it is no surprise that dog racing, with its systemic cruelty, injuries and death, has attracted negative attention and global condemnation and has been banned in many countries. The good news this week was the announcement that Wales has also moved to ban greyhound racing. Dog racing must end in Australia because for every year of its continued existence, excess breeding will compound the many thousands of greyhounds already suffering with nowhere to go. At Friends of the Hound, our mission is to rescue. Our vision is not to have to. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, gosh, Lisa, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation.
Sorry, I'm sitting in the dark now. Got dark.
I noticed that. I thought that's pretty funky background you've got. I just wanted to say that between you, Lisa White, and Lisa Ryan, and John for the Coalition Against Greyhound Racing, and all of your colleagues, you are the most formidable allies of greyhounds, and heaven knows it'll be because of all the hard work that you've invested when this atrocious industry is finally closed. So thank you again for giving up some of your evening. I'll just take the chat box now. I've noticed that Rachel has been responding to quite a few of the chats. So thanks, Rachel. I'll just head up here at the beginning. So okay, from Emma Karen, a rodeo is scheduled to be held in Blacktown on the 12th of April. Everywhere. Thanks, Emma. And people have been signing the petition, Lisa Ryan, which is great, throughout the presentations today. And Lisa Ryan, hard work, so appreciated, which is lovely. So there's lots of sign, which is great. Okay, and this is from Lisa Ryan to Rachel. The work done by Rachel and her team and board is so important and equally very challenging because of the lack of transparency in spite of public funding. So we're very grateful for your expertise, Rachel, and the resources you make available that help us all be better advocates. Ditto that. And It was it was a dual sword, seeing that female mice and what was being done to them. It was horrific and unbelievable. But my gosh, it got a lot of press, which is indicative that while people, sometimes jump up and down about cruelty to primates and dogs, poor little rodents don't get much of a look in, but they certainly did on this occasion, which is very heartening. So, yeah, just a lot of people thanking all of you. This is from Lisa Ryan for you, Lisa. Before we get a total ban, what do you believe are the most critical reforms that need to be made to make a difference for greyhounds?
Wow, so many. As far as rehoming goes, obviously, look, I think the biggest problem is breeding, overbreeding. So a reduction in breeding is going to improve so much for greyhounds overall. And obviously, it's a hard one because the industry is reliant on having a lot of dogs. So, but all the welfare problems stem from that main one of overbreeding. Too many dogs, just too many.
Thank you, Lisa. And Keith Smith has just joined AFSA, which is wonderful. And Belinda Oppenheimer has put a link here with regards animal-free science, advocacy. Yep, and she's also referring to the strangulation of rats. And Janine Burns, hello, Janine. She was seeking a book on which brands are really cruelty-free, and Rachel responded, they don't have a printed booklet, but you can search for companies and see if they are accredited by Cruelty Free International, which is, thanks for the heads up about that. From Sharon, did AFSA provide any submissions to the Australian Code for the care and use of animals for scientific purposes? The code seems useless, as it seems the AECs approve anything. And Rachel says, we did make some suggestions when code amended cosmetics, but have an extremely detailed raft of recommendations for the full code reform. Currently, the language is so ambiguous that it's easy for the AECs to work around. Yeah. Okay, and Kara's put a link here to the CPG's blood money map. It's very powerful. Lisa Ryan is asking of you, Rachel, is there any country that stands out as being progressive with moving away from animal experimentation and medical research? Rachel has responded, we have some examples of what other countries have done, definitely more progressive toward a phase out in the Netherlands, UK and Switzerland. And Rachel's provided a link here, replacing animals, better ways to do research, animal-free science advocacy. Thank you for that, Rachel. Keith Smith is sending a love heart. I think that's for everyone. And Rachel continues, also recommend this recording of Cambridge Animal Rights Law Talk on phasing out animal experiments and how it can be done. So if we've got some links here, so I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to cut and paste those links or click onto them. Lisa Ryan, love your work, Lisa White, and all the amazing volunteers at Friends of the Hounds, not just the rescue, rehabilitation and rehoming, but for all your advocacy and expertise as well. Yeah, ditto that. And Kara's posted a link here, read more about FOTH work here. Thank you so much, Lisa. Susan S., so educational and heartfelt. Lee, thank you to all the speakers. You are inspiring. Susie Herder, thank you for the amazing work. You, Lisa, and Friends of the Hound. Gracie says, special thanks to you and Lynette. Lisa Ryan, yay for Wales, and the bill to ban greyhound racing in Scotland comes up in April this year, so paws crossed. Absolutely. Kylie Turner, hello. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa White, exclamation. Okay, Dusty, is Dewick lying? They say rescues only rehomed 7% of dogs in New South Wales. Are they lying? Heaven forbid. Susan Hawkswood says, thank you to all of tonight's speakers. Marina DB, thank you for all the amazing work. Neil Jones, thank you, Lisa. Wonderful, all-embracing presentation. Is it available for local use? The use of anti-inflammatory, readily available drugs enables arthritic and formerly injured hounds to keep racing. It is horrific. Our most recent rescued hound suffers as a result. So sorry to hear that. And from Clem, thank you to all the wonderful speakers. Truly grateful for your amazing work. Kimberly Batson, are greyhound rehoming groups working together or separately on these issues? What is the relationship with the industry's gap? Also, are rescues from different states and territories dealing with this separately or together? Lisa, do you mind?
Yep, I can answer that.
Thanks.
We do work obviously separately and together. There is a greyhound working group from each state. Yeah, there are participants from each state that do get together, and the problem with greyhound racing is because it's operated state by state, and it's very different in each state. For instance, in WA, it's run by the government, and so each state operates differently. So there are different aspects to the welfare issues. But yes, the answer is yes. We have started working together and brainstorming, and it's only in its infancy, but we hope to achieve great things by collaborating. As far as GAP goes, we don't really have much of a relationship with GAP as such. Most of the time, we're just happy for any greyhound to get a home. Unfortunately, there has been issues around some of the rehoming occurrences within GAP, but as I said, a greyhound in a home is a greyhound in a home.
Yeah. Can I just jump in there too, Linda?
Yeah.
In terms of GAP, which is greyhounds as pets, that rescue organisation, which is, as Lisa explained, under each state or territory's racing body. So GAP is funded by the industry. So it's a rescue facility, but it has been established. So for New South Wales, for example, the GAP Rescue Group is funded by Greyhound Racing New South Wales. So the money they get, which is millions of dollars, that people like Lisa White her head would be spinning if she got access to the money GAP New South Wales gets, for example. And they are rehoming significantly less dogs than people like Lisa White and our other volunteer greyhound groups do. So again, Animal Liberation has a very different view on GAP New South Wales. They are not doing, a lot of their dogs are in shelters as opposed to greyhounds in Lisa White's care that are in foster homes where they're learning normal life experiences like a vacuum cleaner or a television. The GAP dogs are in shelters. The GAP dogs, it's basically 2 strikes or 3 strikes and you're out. I have certainly heard, and Animal Liberation has a stream of people who have adopted through GAP, and serious issues, including physical issues, have not been identified through GAP or through the vets they're using. There was one that Lisa White's group helped a girl called Biscuit very recently, where many thousands of dollars, that's part of that $24,000 Lisa
Yes.
was talking about, a beautiful girl called Biscuit that we posted about on Animal Liberation, and it was a story that horrified me. And Biscuit is one of the dogs that we've continued to lobby GWIC about, because it was such a blatant lack of care and lack of, you know, this girl had 2 broken hips and a whole lot of other injuries too, and nobody at GAP realised. It was only when Lisa's team got specialist scans and expert vets looking at this girl saying there's a whole lot of issues with her, and Lisa and her team, through fundraising, you know, volunteers out on the weekends selling raffle tickets and also and t-shirts and things, raising money so that this beautiful girl Biscuit could be pain-free after a huge amount of surgery, and I mean extensive surgery. It wasn't just the hips, it was her paw and a whole lot of other issues that had remained unseen by GAP New South Wales. So I have a very cynical view of GAP New South Wales. I'm sure there are people there that are compassionate and love greyhounds and are volunteering and doing all the right stuff. But because it's funded by the industry, it's controlled by the industry. And remember, what kicked off the current Drake inquiry in New South Wales was an exposure of GAP facility in New South Wales. There was blood on the concrete and dogs with their heads stuck under doors, and all of those horrific images that we made public on our Animal Lib website, and the testimony from volunteers that worked there about the lack of care and the lack of treatment for dogs. So, you know, I'm sure there are some good people there, but because it's controlled and financed by the greyhound racing industry, the very industry that causes the harm to these dogs, then I think it is healthy to be cynical about what they do.
Thank you, Lisa. We're coming to the end of our webinar. I've just got a couple more from Keith Smith. Thank you, Lisa, Rachel, and Lisa, for your moving presentations and powerful advocacy. Boodle, what about GAP South Australia? Would you like to take that one, Lisa White?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that any GAP South Australia is also the PR arm of the industry, so the rehoming arm of the industry. Unfortunately, South Australia doesn't have an independent rehoming group, so all dogs have to go through GAP in South Australia.
Okay, thank you for that. Kara's just provided a link to Biscuit's story on Facebook, and from Coral, petition shared to multiple groups, of which I am a member. Thank you, Coral. So disappointed that the POCTA Act still stands with no amendments. Re-rodeos. Labor has disappointed so many with their broken promises. Kara's provided another link to the Y Gap here, and that brings us to the end of our webinar. And my deepest thanks to okay, and last one from Boodle. Thank you to all the amazing speakers, and thank you for a very informative webinar. Thank you, Boodle. And my deepest thanks to Lisa Ryan and to Rachel Smith and Lisa White, and as always to Kara, and to all of you for joining us this evening. It's just been so good to share tonight with you, and I look forward very much, or we do, to seeing you all back again, and we'll post details of our next webinar, which will be in roughly 7 to 8 weeks. Okay, thank you so much, and good night.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you. Good night.